Hello there, everyone. My name is Morgan McClintock. Welcome to Fired Up. And today I am joined by Nicole Pytel. Hey, Nicole, how are you?
Hi, Morgan. I'm good. Hey, everybody listening out there.
So today we're going to talk about email marketing in the AI era. So a couple of announcements at the beginning of the show. The first is we're looking for our next series of guests to come onto Fired Up. We typically interview CMOs, leaders in marketing, experts, MarTech vendors. So if you or someone you know fits the bill, please go to Firebrand Marketing, and on the podcast, you'll see our sign-up form, and we'll post it in the show notes. And the second, Nicole, is a very exciting announcement that we're going to have a special series called Fired Up Funded. And this is going to be all about how startups, both early and late stage, get their funding. So we'll be talking to CEOs and co-founders all about how did they actually get the deal? What was that like? What did they learn? What are they going to do with the money that they've got? What are the challenges of that? What's their market opportunity? So this is a deep dive into one particular company, a particular moment in time, how they recently secured a deal. And we're really excited about that. Again, booking guests for that too. And why are we doing that? Because of the changes in the media at the moment, there are fewer opportunities for companies to sort of profile themselves at this key moment. And for the rest of us in the community to really understand, well, how did this deal go down? We'll share a few of those, but it'll be called Fired Up Funded. And we're looking forward to launching that series 2. So watch this space.
Yeah, very exciting. Good stuff.
It's going to be great. So the topic for today, though, is email marketing in AI era. And judging by my inbox, Nicole, it's changed massively.
Yes, it has indeed. My inbox is a very good measure of that as well. And I'm sure everybody listening to us right now, some of you are probably checking your email while you listen to this. I'm sure you've seen it too.
Right. The email volumes have gone up, and it's provided a great opportunity for more customization, but some of that has gone awry. But email remains a great channel. In fact, Nicole, just to stop at the show here, would it be useful if I tell a little bit about the history of email marketing?
Yes, I think you should. Everybody loves a good story.
Everybody loves a good story. And look, the first email was sent by Ray Tomlinson back in 1971. But it wasn't until 1978, I'm just going to get this right, that Gary Thurek of DEC, Digital Equipment Corporation, sent the first email to 400 people, marketing email, trying to, sell their proposition. And you know what? They got $13 million of revenue back from that. So I'm going to say that the very first email for email marketing that was sent was probably the most performant, had the best returns, because generating 13 million out of 400 emails sent feels pretty good to me.
That's a pretty good ROI when you think of that in terms of what is 13 million worth today. It's kind of mind-boggling. So way to go, Gary. Good job.
So just, there are, how many email users are there? 4.6 billion email users in 2025 around the world. So that is a very large proportion of the global population, and an estimated 376 billion emails are sent every single day. Many of them, it feels like, to me.
Yes. 375 billion of them end up in Morgan's inbox. That is correct. Yeah.
And you guys probably all feel the same. So the volume is high. But, email remains one of the best ways to reach your target audiences, right? So why don't you just start here by talking to us about email as a channel today, Nicole?
Yeah. So, the way I like to think about email marketing right now, it's kind of this oasis of sorts. It's that little pond of water in the really hot desert, because right now brands, they're trying to figure out GEO, generative engine optimization. What is going on with AI? How do we optimize for it? How do we get seen in it? They're still trying to keep up with SEO. That's not going anywhere. We've published a lot of content as to why SEO is still very much in play. You've got organic social platforms that, are really becoming very much pay to play. The days of putting up a LinkedIn post and having most of your followers see it are long, long gone. Now we're looking at a very small percentage. So there's a bit of a wild west going on right now, but email is kind of like that cool, almost retro kind of thing that's just sitting back, doing its thing. And it's the one channel that you really, truly have full control over. And if you're a control freak like me, that is a really good feeling. You control who's on the list, you control which segments are on the send, you control what's in the message. Instead of trying to get AI to talk about your brand, and AI is making a lot of first impressions about the way that they're talking about brands instead of the ways that brands are talking about themselves. Email gives you this direct pipeline to everybody that you want to talk to. And there's really no other channel that's offering that right now.
That's right. I mean, you see organic traffic going down 15, 25% on your site. Here is a way to reach your audiences directly. And let's just talk about AI and email. Traditionally, when it comes to cold outreach, one of the challenges has been the level of personalization needed to get through means that necessarily the volume of emails that you could send pre-AI was quite small because you need to research all those people. But those would be high open rate, high performance, right? Or you would send a high volume of emails that were generic to people and just see if you can sweep people up in that. The challenge was, can you find somewhere in the sweet spot that has enough personalization to punch through and stand out, but could also be done at scale to make it effective, because it is a numbers game ultimately. And we had Dan Englander on our show. He's an expert in cold email outreach and outbound in general, and has this paradigm around relationships at scale. And he really pioneers this approach. But I feel like with AI, that middle ground has actually really become swamped, because most of the cold outbound that I get now scrapes my LinkedIn and says, hey, you've worked at this company, or I see from your website that, I love the work that you, in the case study you did here, sort of soft personalization tokens that they put. But AI has enabled a higher level of personalization and scale, but you can sense it across the board. So my question then, Nicole, is, has AI really sort of damaged email marketing when it comes to outbound?
I don't think it's damaged it. I think it's just really forced the cream to rise to the top. All of us have inboxes that are filling up as we speak, and it's always been hard to stand out in an inbox. And now that they've upped the ante with personalization and scale, I'm with you, Morgan. I get a ton of emails every single day. Oh, I saw this post you just put on LinkedIn, or I saw this blog post you just published. And you could just feel that a human did not write it. So I think it just kind of ups the ante for everyone else to really keep that authentic human connection. Now, can AI help you write emails and do all this? Absolutely. Here at Firebrand, we use it to help us create subject lines and preview text and headlines in the body copy. We'll even use it. Hey, help me edit this to align better with our brand voice. So, things like that. So there's ways that you can use AI the right way and still keep that human authentic feel. But to your point, Morgan, with cold outreach, it just, I don't want to say it's damaged the reputation. I think it's made it a little bit harder, and it's really made it even more critical to sound authentic.
Right. And let's just talk about targeting as well. A lot of these AI SDR tools say that they're going to find in-market prospects by scraping the web and looking at people's profiles, their social activity, other signals, so that then you can prioritize them on the list. That's certainly good. Using AI to chain together different data sets so that you can get a high intent audience and get the timeliness of an email right to land in the inbox at the right time, I think is a brilliant use of AI, because anyone who has spent time pouring through lists of prospects to sort of go, okay, not this person, this is, not this info at address, etc., and just sort of manually doing that, that is a thankless task. But for a long time, for email marketers, those were the front lines of email marketing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's made it a lot easier. It's gotten rid of that manual, tedious, probably the type of work that you would just say, never mind, unless you really had to, or you handed it off to the poor intern, something like that. So it's definitely made life a lot easier for getting out helpful, relevant, personalized information.
So let's just talk about some stats about why email is important today, Nicole. You've got a few in our show notes here about
Yeah.
the role of it. And I think it's important just to sort of contextualize where email fits into the buyer journey.
Yeah, definitely wanted to do some digging and see, email's been around for forever, since 1978. It's been generating ROI, apparently. So in 2025, we found that 80% of B2B buyers are actually more likely to engage with a brand that consistently delivers relevant content. Well, what's the easiest way to get it to them? Through email. They're probably not going to see your LinkedIn post. Are they going to just magically come to your blog? No, this is not Field of Dreams. Just because you build it does not mean they will come. Email is the best way to provide that value over time. They want it. Make it easy for them to get, especially in tech where the sales cycles are so long. That's a prime reason for email right there. Another feather in email's cap is we found that 64% of B2B buyers say that they really value content that speaks directly to their industry, their role, or their challenges. Now, that's not groundbreaking information. We understand that. People want a message that feels like it's for them. But email segmentation is where you can get that level of precision and do it at scale. We've seen, just remarkable strides with automation. That's the one really powerful thing about email too. I always tell sales folks, we can automate things on the marketing side that you can't on the sales side. You've got 24 hours in a day and only, so many people that you can reach out to. Sure, there are tools to speed that up, but the marketing automation is so powerful. And we've seen that automated flows are really effective. We're seeing, open rates, over 50%. We've seen data that shows that they're contributing to 30 times the revenue compared to non-automated emails. So it just shows the power not only of email, but of, more sophisticated email and automated setup. Single sends are great. They'll keep you in touch with your audience. They don't scale and they don't have the power that you get from that automation.
So segmentation is important here when it comes to performance of email. And typically, how might a company think about segmentation? What are some of the dimensions that they should split their list down rather than sending the same email to everyone on it?
Oh, there's so many ways that you can do it. I think probably the most obvious is if you've got a lead gen magnet, anybody who downloads it goes into a nurture. 4 or 5 emails that carry that message. They keep that conversation going for whatever that lead gen magnet was. That's easy. Another easy one is re-engagement. 90 days in the email world is a very long time. So if you've got a group of people that haven't opened a marketing email in 90 days, it's time to start re-engaging with them. So pick, some valuable, timely content, some stuff that's really going to grab their attention, get them to open it, and then bring them back in, kind of rewarm them and get them back into that active consideration process. You can also split it by industry. You can split it by role if you want to have a stream for CTOs versus CEOs or CFOs. You can do it that way. You can do it by life cycle stage, like one email goes to MQLs, another set of emails goes to opportunities. You can even do associated contacts. We did this with one client where there was one contact at the company that was an opportunity. And we built out a nurture campaign that all of the other contacts at that company went into a specialized nurture just to keep our client top of mind. They necessarily weren't part of the buying committee. They weren't tagged as an opportunity in HubSpot, but they're influencers. They're in the database. You might as well have that conversation. And we really showed them, hey, this is what it would be like if you were a partner of ours. Here's what it's like to work with us. Here's what people say about, our customer support or things like that, or how we onboard, those kinds of things. So, the sky is the limit when it comes to segmentation. As many ways as you can think of, there's always a way to get a very, very personalized, relevant, targeted message out.
Right. And by the way, you just mentioned HubSpot, and this is why it's important to have a marketing CRM so that you can do the split by demographics or firmographics or job title or stage, life cycle stage, but also just by their behaviors, right? What are they actually doing, and dropping them out of flows when they enter the sales process. And so if you don't have that and you're just doing it from a manual sort of list serve that's not that intelligent, doesn't provide that, and we do see that from time to time, a marketing CRM will really sort of up level the game here. Let's talk a little bit about metrics. So the metrics you typically measure when it comes to email marketing: open rate, click-through rate, click-to-open rate. There are lots of benchmarks. When it comes to software, web, some of the metrics I found here, what do you think, Nicole? Open rates about 38%, click-through rates at 2%, and click-to-open rate, which is at 6%. And click-to-open rate is like the people who opened it, how many people actually clicked rather than the sort of overall number. So what do you think about those numbers? Like an open rate at 38%, I guess it depends whether it's a nurture or an email blast or what sector and the timing.
Yeah, part of the reason that I always get a little iffy when it comes to benchmarks is there's so much variety in there. If you look at, say, B2B SaaS or software and web applications, well, who's in that? Because if I'm an early stage startup or maybe a startup that's trying to build some brand awareness, is Google Cloud in this software group? Is AWS in there? Because, there are people that will open an email just because it came from Google or just because it came from AWS. And so I feel like maybe some of the bigger guys are driving up that open rate. In terms of click-through rate at 2%, that's pretty standard of what you see across, the tech type industries. Click to open rate can vary. We've got, 6 here for software and web apps. I've seen as high as 9. But really, I think the biggest thing to do is to have your own internal benchmarks. Because yes, you want to know how you're doing relative to the industry. But when you don't really know who's in there, are these industry giants in there driving it up, it's just going to make you feel bad if you're a smaller company that doesn't have the awareness of Google. So what I like to do is I like to go back the last 12 months and say, okay, what did company X do in terms of opens, clicks, unsubscribes, things like that, so that we can see if we're making progress at our own level. Because it's one thing to say, oh, well, our open rate was only 25%. That's way below the 38% benchmark, and it's really easy to get discouraged. But if your open rate last year was 6 or 7% and now it's 25%, that's a massive gain that you've made. So you should be really, really happy about that. So I always first go to the client's internal benchmarks because that's really the best apples to apples comparison.
Totally fair, because you don't know whether this list is accurate, right? Your company may have gathered this list. They may have bought some of these contacts. They've got some swipes from a show. Some of them could be old. You've come in, maybe you've inherited this list. The company might have pivoted. You don't know whether these people are targets for you anymore. So you've got to warm up the list. And your open rate is going to tell you, okay, did the title and that sort of little preview really entice people to open it, and our brand name? And then this click to open rate, CTOR, will tell you, okay, of the content that's within the email, is this performing and getting people to take the next step? And of course, maybe there isn't a next step to tell. You're just like, oh, here's some information, just keeping in contact. I'm not trying to convert you. The click might not be what you're aiming for, but if you are, that CTOR, that benchmark is the thing. But what are some other metrics that tech marketers might want to look at when they're thinking about the performance of their email marketing?
So we all talk about open and click rate. I think one for me that's a big one is delivery rate, because that's going to show how healthy your email list is. If your delivery rate is less than, I would say, 90%, you've got an issue with list hygiene. And that can oftentimes be because you bought a list, can be for that reason. It can be for a lot of reasons. It could just be you haven't cleaned out the database in a while. Maybe there's a bunch of people tagged as marketing contacts that maybe shouldn't be. That's one thing that I like to look at. But, in terms of metrics really that matter, I love to look at email engagement throughout various life cycle stages, because it's one thing to say, hey, our open rate was 20%. That's about on par with where we're at. I like to dig in and go, okay, well, how many MQLs have opened a marketing email in, say, the last 30 days? How many SQLs? How many opportunities? We had a client that was like, I don't know if our email's really moving the needle. And we kind of poked around in HubSpot and said, in the past 30 days, about 40% of your current opportunities opened at least one marketing email. So it's resonating. It's another touch point through all of those stages too. You think, oh, SQLs and opportunities, those go to sales and marketing shouldn't be talking to them. That's something that you and your sales team need to work out. If that's the process, then that's the process. But the marketing emails, keeping those folks in certain sends can be really helpful, because it's another touch point. It's another way for them to engage with you. It's a softer message probably than what they're going to get from sales. It doesn't require sales time to send them another touch point. So I love to go through the life cycle stages and see what's really resonating, because, if you've got a bunch of leads that maybe aren't quite the right fit, or maybe your ad targeting isn't quite right and you're generating leads that aren't right. But if you've gotten to like MQL, SQL opportunity stage, like those are the people that you've vetted and said, this is who we want to be talking to. Are they engaging with you? I think that's a big thing to look at.
Yeah. And it's totally fair for people at the opportunity stage to still receive your newsletter, or maybe to receive a general blast about new product update that, people are smart enough to understand, all right, this is going to all the audiences, as long as the frequency of those is not, we're not weekly, daily sending out those kind of updates. And we're not trying to send them special offers to, that would be discouraging. But I think dripping them out, the newsletter is another great touch point, as you say. So let's just talk about some of the sort of best practices and even common mistakes that tech marketers make when it comes to email marketing.
There's a lot of room for improvement when it comes to email marketing. And, especially right now in the AI era, when email marketing is that one steady rock that's people are going to see it. You want to make the most of it. And so I think, the first thing that I think of is you're either emailing too much or too little. You email too much. Think about it. If you're constantly hearing from the same brand over and over again, like they become annoying. Like you probably stop caring how good their product is. You just find them annoying. And that's why, marketing automation platforms come with frequency limits so that you can ensure, if you've got a bigger marketing team and maybe product marketing is sending out some emails and like a lot of stuff, you can set limits so that somebody only gets 3 emails a week or whatever you decide that threshold is. And then after they hit that, it doesn't matter. You could have 100 marketing emails go out. They're not going to get them. So emailing too much definitely can be an issue. Emailing too little is also an issue because it gives people time to forget about you. And we don't want to think that we're forgettable, but look at your own inbox. If somebody's not a relatively frequent member of that inbox of yours, you're probably going to forget about them just in the hustle and bustle of everyday life. So I think that's a big one. Another mistake that I see a lot is sending what I call us-centric emails versus a reader-centric email. Instead of we did this, we accomplished that, let's brag about us, flip that around. How does that help the reader? What's the benefit to the reader? Okay, you accomplished this. What does that mean for the reader? Does it mean a better product? Does it mean a lower price? Does it mean, a free trial? Does it mean, hey, all these case studies? Oh, that's real world examples of your product in action. Things like that. And I've actually done some split testing on this. And every time you send an us-centric email, it performs worse than reader-centric. And let's face it, we're all a little selfish. We want to know, what does this have to do with me? Not necessarily what does this have to do with the company sending it. So I think that's a big one to be on the lookout for. And just rewording your email just a little tiny bit. You can still get those humble brags in, but just make the reader know what's in it for them. Another mistake I see is these giant walls of text. Now, especially when this comes to newsletters. Some newsletters are great. They're really helpful. They're really insightful. A lot of them offer, maybe a full article, and you want to scroll through. You want to get that. But man, if it's an email that just does not need to be that long, people are not going to read it. And there is research out there that in general, the more scrolls it takes to get through an email, the less people are to engage with it. And you see kind of these things that are just scroll after scroll after scroll, and God forbid, CTA after CTA. Nobody even knows what to do. Analysis paralysis creeps in. So it's just this giant behemoth of an email. So really think about that, when you're composing emails, and just think about, is this intimidating? Does this look time consuming? Because if it just at first glance looks time consuming, the odds of somebody reading it are probably pretty slim.
I think that's fair. I mean, certainly the sort of minimalistic text-oriented style for newsletters, that you see in Substack definitely works. But if you use AI, the words are free, so it generates a lot of them. And as the old saying goes, sorry for the length of the letter, but I didn't have time to write a short one. AI will write the long email, and people will probably sense that. And I like to think about it, and you're sort of burning calories for your reader. And how many calories are you going to burn? Are they willing to commit to your brand? For it to be long, it can be long, but it has to have a lot of content and a real distinct style for that to work. And I think most of them could be 25, 50% shorter. So when you get to that point, just get out the red pen and cut as much as you can. And you're probably going to get a lot more message across than you think.
If you want to test this out, go into ChatGPT and ask it to write an email from scratch. It'll give you 4 or 5 paragraphs for sure. I mean, it gives you the great American novel all on its own. So yeah, totally agree with that. And it can be hard to cut it down, but it's important.
Tell me about the logo test, Nicole. What is that?
I love this. And once you have this in your brain, you will never not think about it. Whenever I'm doing a content audit, I'm looking at a client's emails. What I like to do is cover up the logo in the body of their email. And if I cover up the logo, can I tell that it came from you? Does it have your brand? Is it a standard template? Now, I'm not saying all of your emails have to be identical, but does it look and feel like it came from you? Does it look like it came from you? Is the tone of voice, does it sound like it came from you? And, I've found a lot of clients where if you cover up the logo, it looks like totally different companies sending out emails. I mean, they're wildly, wildly different. Like I said, once you start doing this, you can't stop doing it. So try it with your own emails, friends. Go try it and see if our logo wasn't on this, would people know that it's from us? It's a very valuable test. I get a lot of, oh my gosh, aha type moments, like, oh my God, you're totally right. That doesn't look like us at all.
And that just speaks to having a distinct style and design, and the content, the type of content that you often share with your audience has to be and your voice has to be distinct. And so I love that one. Now, one of the marketing channels that's working really well at the moment is events. Events are back. People are going. They're making connections. That deals are getting done. So I see a lot of brands attend events, sponsor events, talk at panels, etc. And email has a big role to play here. So perhaps you could just unpack some best practices so that tech marketers can get the most out of the events that they are sponsoring or attending.
Absolutely. So, I think first is you've got to think well in advance for a big event. If you've got, a target list that is going to be at this big industry event, start reaching out to them a month in advance, 6 weeks in advance, and encourage them to, book a meeting, have your Calendly link ready, say, hey, I know your calendar's going to fill up fast at XYZ event. Let's take 15 minutes to chat. I've seen that work really well for prospects that are going to be there that you really want to talk to. And then, if you're doing something cool at the booth, throw that out there too. People might just stop by because it looks like something fun. They may not have stopped by anyways, but hey, try that. And then after the event is when the rubber really hits the road. Because as much as we would like to think that great conversation we had with those people that came to our booth is going to be stuck in their heads and they're just going to get home and immediately jump on our website, it just doesn't happen. They have talked to a million people. We spoke to a client recently. They were just at a big event. And they said they just watched people bounce from them to all of their competitors' booths. And they're all having, essentially the same conversation because they all sell the same thing. Keep that momentum going. I think a good best practice is if you had a really good chat, there may be some people that sales wants to follow up with directly. Get that list of booth visitors, of scans that you got, and have sales go through it and, kind of cherry pick the people that they want to talk to. And then everybody else, put them into a nurture after that. Keep the momentum going. Remind them of how they met you, kind of what was going on at your booth, that kind of thing. And then feed them information that is relevant to the talking points you had at that event. Maybe you covered a very specific use case, follow up with that and keep that momentum going because people get home from events, they've got all their free pens and coffee mugs and all the things, and then they just go back to work. So, you've got to get in front of them.
Right. You've got to clean that list up fast so that sales can grab the badge swipes that they want to have an active conversation, but then follow up quickly because all of your competitors are going to do that too, right? They're also at the same event. They're doing the same thing. By the time I've had my 5th follow-up, or if yours arrives 10 days after the show, I don't think it's a good look. But you can follow up quite quickly with some quick takes away from the show. Here's what we took away from the show, companion blog post, whatever. You can write that at the event and then have it ready to go. I think that just sort of shows that you're more agile and responsive. And so when it comes to working with sales and email marketing, we talked about it a little bit, but what other sort of best practices and recommendations do you have here, Nicole?
I think the biggest one is everybody just has to be on the same page. And I think that is just the quintessential answer when it comes to sales and marketing. Everybody has to be on the same page. But really, sit down and say, okay, really, when do you want legitimate sales prospects pulled out of a marketing email cadence? And if they say, hey, the moment somebody becomes an SQL, I don't want them receiving any marketing emails. Well, why? And what harm do you think it does if they continue to get our monthly newsletter that's got a lot of thought leadership in it and stuff like that? Have that conversation and figure that out. And it can be a really great opportunity to keep them on some sense. If you've got a really cool case study that just came out that you want to send to everybody, maybe it's a really cool video case study, send that out. Let those people get that. Or at the very least, coordinate with sales and say, hey, we just did this really cool video case study. We're going to do an e-blast about it. We've pulled your folks out of the blast. but take this video, send it to them, make sure they see it. So it's just about being on the same page and understanding, kind of where marketing ends and where sales begins and where is that middle ground. And I can tell you just a best practice that we do for our clients is when we build out nurtures, we set it up so that if somebody in that nurture clicks book a demo, they're pulled out of that nurture immediately. They don't get any more follow-up. Like, they've done what we want them to do. We're going to send them off to sales, and everybody else can stay in the nurture and hopefully warm up and click the demo button a little later.
That's right. So we've talked a little bit about the role of email and its importance today, the impact of AI, because it is changing the personalization, the volume, the list segmentation, the enrichment of lists, many ways in a good way, some in a bad way. We've talked about some benchmarks and some extra sort of deeper metrics that people should look at, and then some sort of best practices there and perhaps some common mistakes to avoid. Just as we wrap here, Nicole, do you have any final advice for tech marketers out there when it comes to email marketing?
I would say stick with it. Sometimes it can feel a little old school. Email's been around forever. Stick with it. It is that tried and true ride or die channel that is going to get your message out when and where you want it and to who you want it. Think about it very strategically. Think about your own inbox. What do you want to see in there? Do you want a bunch of just generic blasts? You don't. You want something that makes sense for you. So think about it in terms of that. Go into your database. Let your imagination run wild. Think of all the different ways that you can split things up. And then also think in terms of scale, because email marketing can get very tedious. So have processes in place. For example, after every event, we do a 5 email nurture to people who visited the booth, or before every webinar, we send out 3 invitations, and 1 the morning of, just in case somebody's calendar freed up. Have processes like that, and it will make email a lot easier. So it doesn't have to be hard to be more sophisticated. You have to think about it a little bit more strategically, but definitely keep doing it.
Oh, yeah. Killer advice there, Nicole. Thanks for that. And thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed that, please drop us a note or follow us here on YouTube. And we look forward to seeing you all again next week. Nicole, thanks for your time. Really enjoyed that.